CHAPTER II of Giant Killers by Charlotte Maria Tucker. This LibriVox is in the public domain. Recording by Lynne Thompson. Chapter II. First Impressions. The next morning Aleck and his sisters met their mother in the breakfast parlour before their guests had left their sleeping apartment. Mr. Roby was still engaged in his study, having as usual risen at 5, that he might not leave one of his various duties neglected. "Mamma," said Bertha, after having received her morning's kiss, "I am afraid that we shall not like these Probyns at all." "It is too early to decide upon their characters," replied Mrs. Roby. "We must wait till we know them a little better." "I think Constantine a very disagreeable boy," said Bertha. "He has a sort of I don't know what sort of manner, but it is not in the least like Aleck's. It is as though he despised us for being girls, and he kicks his feet against the legs of the table, and never keeps still for a moment, and it fidgets me so, I can't bear it." The little girl's brow was all wrinkled over with frowns. "And he's so naughty," said Laura, resting her arms on her mother's knee, and looking up gravely into her face. "He pulled the cow's tail, and would not leave off, and when we told him that it hurts her, he only laughed." "You should have seen how the boys quarrelled for the syllabub," continued Bertha, "pulling and struggling till half of it was thrown over between them." "And they never let me have one drop," added Laura. "I think that they are shocking bad boys." "So they are," said Aleck, as he paused in his task of cutting the loaf for breakfast. "They never read their Bibles before going to bed, nor said their prayers neither, as far as I could tell." Aleck did not add, indeed he did not consider, that although he himself had not omitted to kneel down, as he had been taught from his childhood to do, his thoughts had been so much taken up with his new companions, and drawing a contrast between their conduct and his own, that not a feeling of real devotion had given life to his heartless prayer. "Not say their prayers!" cried Laura, looking more shocked than before. "Did you ever think that there were such wicked boys?" "And such stupid ones too," rejoined Aleck. "When I spoke to them about their lessons, Adolphus said, with a great yawn, that learning was a bore." Laura raised her eyebrows with an expression of arch surprise. "I offered to lend him my account of the famous cook. 'Oh, I know all about him already,' said he. 'His name was Sawyer, and he made a capital sauce.'" Here two merry dimples appeared on the little girl's cheeks, and deepened as her brother proceeded. "And when I asked him if he did not like Caesar, he thought I was speaking of a dog, and inquired if he was one that would not bite." This overcame Laura's gravity altogether. She burst into such a merry ringing laugh that neither Bertha nor Aleck could help joining her heartily; and even Mrs. Roby, who was meditating a little lecture to her children on too hastily judging others, found it difficult to keep her countenance. The entrance of the Probyns stopped the mirth of which they had been the subject. Breakfast passed over, then came hours of study, which served to strengthen Aleck in his opinions that his companions were very stupid boys. Adolphus appeared the dullest of the two; not that he naturally was so, but he had always been too lazy to learn. He stumbled at every word in his reading, spelt pheasant with an F, and thumb without a B, could not see any difference between a noun and a verb, and confused the Red Sea with the black. Poor Mr. Roby, accustomed to an intelligent pupil, stifled a quiet sigh, and Aleck, with a feeling of vast superiority, could not hide the mingled surprise, amusement, and contempt, which the boy's ignorance called up in his own mind. The Probyns noticed the smile on his face, and it stung them more than a real injury would have done. While indulging his secret pride, Aleck was sowing in the hearts of his companions bitter feelings of resentment and hate. After lessons, an hour was given to play in the garden; but anything but play it proved to Aleck, for the Probyns were determined to show him that, if he had more book learning than they, he, a country boy, was ignorant of many things familiar to them from living in London. Without coming to an open quarrel, they made him feel that they disliked him, showed such open contempt for what he valued, and treated his favourite pursuits with such scorn, that, irritated almost beyond his power of endurance by a trial to which he was unaccustomed, Aleck lost both his patience and his temper, and was laughed at for being so easily put in a pet. It was fortunate for him that the time had now come for joining his mother and sisters in the parlour. The boys found the little ladies busy at their sewing. Mrs. Roby had quitted the room to see a poor woman who had come for advice and assistance. "This is our nice half hour with mamma," said Laura. "She always reads something to us before dinner, while we work, and Aleck draws beside her." "More reading!" exclaimed Adolphus, with no pleased look. "Oh, but it's amusing reading," said Laura. "There, Aleck dear, I've put your copy and pencil all ready for you, and I've not forgotten the india rubber this morning, you see, though I am such a careless little thing." Another time she would have been repaid by a smile and a kiss, but Aleck was in no mood for that now. "Amusing reading! I wonder what you call amusing?" said Constantine, who, to Bertha's great annoyance, was occupying his idle fingers in turning over the contents of her work–box. "Why, mamma has been reading to us little bits," said Laura; "only little bits such as I can understand, you know, of the history of good Mr. Budget, the successful merchant." "The successful merchant! I'll not stand that," exclaimed Constantine, flinging Bertha's reels of cotton right and left, as he threw himself back in his chair. "Oh, but it's so curious, so interesting, and all true! There's the story of the little donkey, and of the horse that was lost, and the great tea–party, things that amuse even me." "Amuse a stupid girl like you, but—" "If you talk about stupidity," cried Aleck, firing up, "let me tell you—" Oh, how thankful the girls were for the entrance of their mother at this moment! To see flushed faces, fiery looks, clenched fists, was so new to them, that in terror lest their darling brother should be drawn into a quarrel and be hurt, poor little Laura could scarcely restrain her tears, and Bertha, as she stooped to pick up her reels, wished from her heart that these odious new–comers had never arrived to break the peaceful serenity of Dove's Nest. Mrs. Roby's quick eye instantly detected that there had been words amongst the children. She thought it best, however, to take no notice of this, and opening a little drawer in her table, took out of it a manuscript book. "I have been thinking what kind of reading might serve to entertain you all, uniting some instruction with amusement." Constantine turned down his lips at the word instruction. He thought that the lady did not see him. "Here is an allegory, a sort of tale which contains a hidden meaning beneath the apparent one, and—" "But I don't like hearing reading, ma'am," interrupted Adolphus, with much more candour than good manners. "No kind of reading?" inquired Mrs. Roby, in perfect good–humour. "Oh, some story–books and fairy–tales. I don't mind them, if I've nothing better to amuse me." "I think, then, that this book may suit your taste. It is the story of a giant–killer." "Jack the Giant–killer! Oh, I've heard that 1,000 times," cried Adolphus, while the Robyns could scarcely help laughing at the idea of their mother reading such a story to them. "Mine is a new giant–killer, a great hero, I can assure you," said the lady; "and I think that my tale is a better one than that with which you are so well acquainted, as it contains a great deal that is true." "Why, there are no giants now," cried Constantine. "I am not so sure of that," replied Mrs. Roby. I believe that we might find both giants and giant killers in the world at this time, if we only knew where to look for them." "I should like to hear this story," said Constantine, afraid of the lady's returning to the successful merchant. "Then perhaps you will kindly wind this skein of silk for me while I read," said Mrs. Roby, willing to save an unfortunate tidy from the fingers which were now picking at its fringe. "There, let me find the end for you. I am sure that Adolphus will oblige me by turning the skein while you wind. And now that you are all busily employed, I will at once begin my little book." Chapter 3